Yeah, so I'm now just going to share my screen and show you guys a few images to sort
Sure.
of illustrate what you just said about their build up and about what the fullbacks do and that sort of thing. So, is this visible?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so City are in blue over here,
Yep.
opposition's in red.
Yep.
This is sort of, let's say, the sort of build up that we've been seeing from City this season. This isn't something that they've been doing over the last 2 or 3 seasons, and I'll explain what I'm talking about here. So if you look at the fullbacks here, you've got number 3 and number 2 as the fullbacks.
Oh wow, very
So
interesting. Yep.
when
This
City
is just to clarify one thing here, Harshal, before you go on further. This is when they're in
Yeah.
possession of the ball, right?
yeah, so I don't have a ball over here, but let's assume
Yep.
the keeper has the ball over here.
Okay, got it.
So when the ball is in their defensive third, or when they're basically trying to build out from the back, one thing that they've done this season, which they didn't do last season, was that both fullbacks, so number 2, number 3, if you're looking at number 2 and number 3 as fullbacks, both of them are coming into midfield.
Yep.
Over the last 2 seasons, you'd see one of them come into midfield and the other one stay wide. But so yeah, okay, this one's a better image to show because you've got a ball away and I've got a couple of arrows done as well. So as I was saying, so if say the number 4 America Laporte has the ball over here, both your fullbacks are coming into midfield, and the width is being maintained, high up the pitch by the wingers. And this is something that you will always see with the Pep Guardiola team. The wingers stay wide on the touchline, no matter whether they're true wingers or inverted wingers, in the sense that even if it's, say, a Riyad Mahrez who's playing on the right, but he's left-footed, even then he will stay out wide in the initial phases. Raheem Sterling, right-footed, playing on the left, he will stay wide. They will only come inside later on when the ball is in the middle third or the final third. But in the build-up phase, they stay wide. And the point of this is to stretch the opposition. Because if I am staying wide, if my wingers are wide, the opposition
Defense has to go wide.
fullbacks, they have two options. Now, either they also come wide, which leaves gaps between them and the centre backs, or
Yep.
they choose to
which
stay
can be
narrow.
exploited,
Yep.
by the attacking midfielders,
Exactly.
basically, right?
The half spaces. So
Yep.
if you look at the image I've drawn here, you can see I've got dotted lines from the edge of the penalty area going across the pitch, and from the edge of the 6-yard box going across the pitch. So this is something that divides the pitch into 5 sort of zones, and the 2 sort of zones which are, so you've got the big sort of central zone, and then the 2 zones that are that are just next to them, which are from the edge of the 6-yard box to the edge of the penalty area in terms of width. Those 2 zones are basically known as a half space. And the half space is, I mean, every manager, in terms of the way they play or in terms of chance creation, they want to try and get their players on the ball in the half spaces, because those are the areas where the opposition is left in, they need to make a decision as to whether who's the player who goes out to press, who's the player who stays back. And I'll illustrate this later on as well. But just over here, if you look, because the wingers stay wide, either the fullbacks have to come out, which means that there are gaps between the fullback and the centre back in those half spaces, or the defense stays narrow, in which case the wingers will be free to receive the ball, because by the time they receive the ball, they'll have the time to turn and run by the time the opposition fullback comes across, because the fullbacks are staying narrow. So
essentially you're caught in a situation as a defensive team, which is either you stay narrow and you give lots of space basically to the wingers like Sterling, Grealish, for example, even Mahrez, or you push out wide to them, your fullbacks, and then you leave a lot of space for people like Bernardo Silva and De Bruyne, etc., to exploit in the half spaces.
Exactly.
Right? Or Gundogan to exploit in the half spaces.
Exactly. And that's the sort of decision that it's obviously a very tricky one for teams to make, and the different teams have different ways of combating that. But it's just the fact that the setup that City have automatically forces you to make this decision, that you need to do this, or rather you need to choose one way right from the outset. And coming back to this image, as I said, this season we're seeing both fullbacks stuck in, and one of the reasons for this is to guard against counterattacks. So when the ball moves up, you'll still see the two fullbacks stays fairly central. One of them might go out wide, but both of them usually stay central along with the two centre backs, and then you have a defensive midfielder. So then you've got 5 players sort of in central areas, so that even if one of your attacks breaks down and the opposition counter, you've got 5 players back, or rather, you've got 5 players in central positions to guard against counter attacks. That either forces the opposition into wider areas.
So essentially, what they're doing is they're able to get another attacking player in the sense that Gundogan can push up with the license to push up, as opposed to stay back a little bit, because your fullbacks are the one that are providing the cover centrally defensively. Is that what it means? Essentially, is that why they do it?
To an extent, yes. That is basically what they were doing last season with Cancelo, with Joao Cancelo sort of playing at left back, but in possession he was playing almost as a central midfielder, as an attacking midfielder at times. And that gave Gundogan the license to go forward, and he scored. He was the highest scorer last season. But this does also allow the two sort of number 10s in that sense. So if City are playing a 4-3-3, if you've got Fernandinho or Rodri as the defensive midfielder, and then you'll usually have, when everybody's fit, say you'll have Kevin De Bruyne and Bernardo Silva, say, as the two attacking central midfielders. But they're essentially playing as two number 10s. And earlier it was David Silva. So it used to be David Silva and Kevin De Bruyne as two number 10s floating around in those half spaces, making it difficult for the opposition to decide who's going to mark, whether it's going to be the central midfielder, the centre back, and in terms of the striker as well, it's not exactly a false nine, but the striker is also someone who gets involved in the build-up. He'll drop deep, and then he'll again sort of run in behind. And again, so if we were to move this on a little bit further, say when City have the ball even further up the pitch, look at, so you've got, say, the defensive midfielder dropping in here, you've got the two centre backs. This is actually probably a situation where City are sort of almost ultra attacking, because both fullbacks are out wide. Usually you'll probably see one of the fullbacks tucked in and forming a back four. But this is also something they've been doing, where the fullback sort of both fullbacks go wide. And Kyle Walker's role in this sort of situation, or just in general, Kyle Walker has been one of the most important players to City's style of play under Guardiola, because he's capable of tucking inside and playing as a third centre back when City have the ball, but he's also has the pace to play as a proper right back and overlap. And when he plays as a third centre back, he's the one who has the pace to guard against counter attacks and sort of chase back when needed, if the opposition are counter attacking. So even with Walker here, he can go outside, he can underlap and all of that. If it's Cancelo on the opposite flank, he'll usually come inside rather than staying wide, because it'll again be the winger, whoever it is on the left, Grealish, Sterling, whoever it may be, providing the width there. And the arrows are just indicative of this type of movement that you can see from the players. And it's not fixed. Depending on where the ball is and what they want to do, you can have players going one way or the other. So I'll just sort of try and illustrate this here, for example. I've got player names, and you can make a better
and maybe with this, as you're showing this, it'd be nice to show, if you could show us a typical move from City which we have seen through the years, and how that plays out, which is basically, if you notice, a lot of City's goals and the goals they score are tap-ins. There's an overlapping run. There's someone who squares the ball, and it's always a tap-in. You see tons of those goals. So how does that play? It'd be nice to see that, really, a situation like that. It happens all the time.
That's become a trademark City goal, that either a fullback or a winger sort of gets to the byline somewhere around here.
And that's very interesting, right? Because we talk about their fullbacks moving centrally, but still you end up seeing them on the byline getting that ball across many a times for a tap-in. So it'd be nice to see how that plays out.
I can try and show that. So that's, as you said, it's become a trademark City goal, where
signature
cut back across the 6-yard box, and then whoever's at the far post, whether it's a winger or the striker, whoever sort of taps it in. So, okay, let me sort of try and build this up here. So I've got the opposition here in a standard sort of 4-4-2. I'm not going to move them around too much. In a standard 4-4-2 out of possession, they're sort of trying to cut off space centrally, which is what a lot of teams try to do against City. But so where's the ball? So what happens here is, usually you'll see, say, if it's this lineup where you've got De Bruyne, Gundogan over here, they'll try and pick up positions here. you've got Fernandinho or Rodri, whoever it may be over here, Ruben Dias, Aymeric Laporte here. Edison actually plays a pretty active role in possession, so he actually can, play these
Take
sort of
balls,
passes. He can play long balls. He's really good with sort of playing longer, very accurate long passes, so that can help bypass a lot of the opposition and
the
find players
extra
in
men,
space as
the
well.
extra men on the field.
And then at times you'll have Walker playing here as a sort of, staying central. At times you'll have him overlapping. So now actually, if you look at the game that City played against Norwich, where they beat Norwich 5-0 a couple of weeks ago, they scored, I think, 2 or 3 goals from the exact same move, which is what we spoke about, where it's a winger getting across and crossing. Now, it was actually Bernardo Silva who was playing here rather than De Bruyne, but I'm not changing that here. Just the role stays the same no
The
matter who the
concept
player
is the
is.
same. Yep.
Yeah. So what they were doing is, you've got, say, Gundogan sort of coming in here, drifting inside. You've got Fernandinho here. Grealish was playing that game, so he was here. Now, the movement of this player was extremely important, because what was happening was that this player, Bernardo Silva, De Bruyne, whoever it may be, was coming deep. And
Okay.
that was drawing whoever the player over here was. Over here, sorry, this one.
Yep.
The opposition sort of left-sided central midfielder.
Yep.
This guy drops off here. He comes out here. So then that leaves space over here, because if the wide man usually is not, I mean, in the Norwich game wasn't that central. He was a little bit more wide.
Yep.
Walker was stepping up here. Jesus was the wide man. You've got Torres here. Torres was sort of making a double movement as well, where he was coming here, drawing one defender out, and then quickly darting into the space that had been created. So those sort of double movements are also very, very crucial to the way Pep sets his team up, and the roles that he asks his players to play, where they go one way, which obviously means that the player follows them, and then that creates the space where they then dart into it. So that's what Torres did eventually. But just a second. Yeah. So as I was saying, what was happening was that De Bruyne was dropping off. He was following him. He was over here trying to track Jesus. But because this space was opened up, both Torres could sort of run into this space. Jesus was able to sort of run in here as well, because the fullback is also drawn out.
Yep.
The ball, and Walker had all the time in the world to pick out this. Excuse me. Yeah, Walker had all the time in the world to pick out this pass. Jesus was able to come in here. Torres had by then made this run. Grealish or Sterling, whoever may be on the left, also sort of makes the run in here at the far post. So that's the goal that Grealish scored, basically, where the ball, Jesus had got past and he crossed the ball. The Norwich defenders had gotten back. One of them sort of got a deflection. It hit Grealish, went in. But the space was basically created by this player's movement, because he drops off, which forces the opposition to follow him. That then creates this sort of space over here.
Which why the fullback tucks in. The fullback tucks in a little bit. Is it because of that? And then you have the room to play that ball wide.
A lot of holes were found.
Jesus basically, and Jesus was basically making this run from like outside to inside and crossing. So Torres scored a goal like this. Grealish scored a goal like this. And I think, I can't remember, there was another goal, I think Sterling, when he came on the second half.
And it's not just Norwich, right? It's not just Norwich, right? It happens to so many teams. Let me ask a very quick question, and I think this will against Arsenal as well. And I think this will lead into the conversation about Klopp as well, and how he tackles the situation with City, or how his teams play and defend and play against City as well. But very quickly, this happens so often with City. Why is the team not able to stop this?
And I also have a question to that.
Why is the team never able to stop this? Because it happens every game.
And I also have a question because based on this, right, what Hari is saying, yes, that's one part of it. The other part of it, City has done it so many times, but very rarely you'll see a City attacker getting caught offside.
No, because that's extremely good coaching. So I'll give you an example. look at Raheem Sterling. Sterling, when he joined City from Liverpool, he was obviously a hugely exciting, talented young player. One of people were excited about him as one of the sort of best upcoming English players coming through. But there was also recognition of the fact that one of the biggest weaknesses in his game was his finishing. That he would struggle to finish even when sent through one-on-one or in good goal-scoring positions. And look at him now. What 4-5 seasons under Pep? He last season was a bit of an aberration, but other than that, I think he's averaged about 12 to 15 goals a season. At times, he's gone past that as well, and he's become a pretty good, reliable goal scorer. And a lot of that is down to Pep's coaching, to the extent that there are anecdotes about the initial sort of training sessions that Pep took for City with Sterling there. He, on the training ground, he basically painted a white dot on the pitch. So whatever your full size pitch that you're training on, Pep painted a white dot and told Sterling that you're going to stand here. When the ball is at that, this is where you're going to be in whatever ABC, whatever phases of play, say the first 2 phases of play, when the ball is in the defensive or middle third for City, you're going to stand here. This is on the pitch. This is where you're going to be. You're not going to move from here. Only when the ball goes into the final third do you sort of make this sort of run. If until then you're going to stay here, you're going to stay wide, not going to move from here. Why? Because again, as I said, it forces this guy to come out here. So then it opens up the space for whoever your number 10 or sort of left-sided midfielder is to come in and run in here. If he doesn't, great, because then when the ball gets to you, by the time he comes here, you can get past. You've got the time to turn and receive and run past. But just the attention to detail or the how specific Guardiola is with things is he literally painted a white dot on the training pitch and told Sterling that this is where you stand here. This is where you need to be. So it's that to answer your question, that is basically why you'll see even City players not getting caught offside, because they time their runs so well, and that's all down to the work they do on the training ground. They time their runs so well because they've been doing it day in and day out, and they practice it day in and day out, and it's almost muscle memory. It's almost automatic as to when they need to make their runs, because there are triggers in terms of when De Bruyne gets the ball here, for example, in this sort of inside right position.
They know where to run.
He makes these fantastic sort of crosses
balls
and passes
through.
But the moment he gets on the ball here, whoever's the central striker knows the run he needs to make. Whoever's out here knows the run he needs to make. Whoever's out here knows the run he needs to make. So it's all very well choreographed, and that's why you'll see them, get caught offside very rarely. And also, to be honest, another reason for that is that you'll very rarely see teams play a high line against City, because they'll drop deep. They don't want to give up space behind the defensive line. You can have all the ball you want over here. You can have all the space here. They don't want to give up space behind the defensive line. So automatically, obviously, when you're not playing a high line, when you're playing a deep defensive line, there isn't space to run into behind, in the sense that you're not going to be caught offside that often, because there aren't too many runs being made in that sort of situation in the first place.
Got it. And to be honest, and I'm sure this leads, obviously we're pressed for time as well, so we're going to lead into the Klopp discussion very quickly now. But when it comes to this, very quickly, Harshal, I know it works like autopilot here, but why is no one able to stop those simple tap-in goals? If it happens regularly every year, shouldn't a team be wiser to those moves by now, an opposition team? And why is it so difficult to stop?
Yeah, it's as you said, it's the classic thing of, what City are going to do, but you still can't stop it. But as I said, it's because of the movement and it's because of the rotations. Because, So as I said, because you've got one player dropping off here, what do you do? Again, it's the dilemma
it's a catch-22. I suppose a catch-22, because if that midfielder doesn't move out to De Bruyne, there's a chance that De Bruyne could whip a ball in as well.
Exactly.
Which gives you another problem. So it's a catch-22 they're caught in. Either way you go and you're dead, basically, essentially. There's no way out.
Yes, I'll just do a theoretical sort of example here. So this is actually quite similar to the shape you can expect to see Cancelo sort of also coming inside, playing here, Walker staying wide. So as you said, if De Bruyne is getting on the ball here, if this guy stays here, he's got all the time in the world to whip a ball like that, and you don't want to give De Bruyne that sort of space. So either he goes across, but if he goes across, I have a simple pass in here, and then he can drop off, or he can say, come in here. Cancelo often comes very central, as I said. So Fernandinho will come in here. He's got the ball now. Now what do you do? Do you ask him to press here? Okay, I can move the ball back here. I can move the ball back here. Now this guy comes. I need to shut him down. But he's got all the time in the world. He's got all the time and space in the world. Now, say if Jesus comes here, this guy has to come in here, because this guy can't do this, because if he also comes in here, he's free.
It's open.
He stays here. He comes in here. And that means that I can make this run in here. So De Bruyne can play this pass here.
Yep.
If he doesn't, he can move out here or whatever, just close by. And that means that he can make this run in here.
Yeah.
At the same time, this man can move in here. Same sort of decisional dilemmas for the opposition here. Do I follow him? If I follow him, he's got space to do this. If I stay, he can run off me and sort of make it into the box, and I have to drop off, and then that leaves space in here. It's just the multiple decisional dilemmas that every player needs to make.
And I think we can sum this up really well. Actually, Harshal, it comes across very simple, right? It's a variety of play. Even though this happens regularly, it's because there's a variation. There's an opportunity. There's also an option that those guys could play a diagonal ball or a through ball or a crossfield ball in. So how it's a dilemma that the opposition is caught in, right? They've got to make a decision one way or the other, and both ways you're essentially screwed both ways, isn't it?
And I know with press for time we'll move on to Klopp as well, but just another thing about how City sort of when they're building up from the back. So if you look at this image, when Edison has the ball, you've got the two centre backs splitting here. And this is actually a template from when I'd done an article on the Champions League final, or preview of the Champions League final of Chelsea versus City, and what Chelsea could do to stop them, or what they might try to do. But again, if you look at it here, Edison has the ball, the two centre backs are here. The problem is, again, it's because why are City able to play out from the back as well so easily? Because of the positions that the players take up. Now, look at the options Edison has. He can play it short here, he can play it short here. But okay, Chelsea have got two forwards marking them, so I can't do that. So then Fernandinho or Rodri drops in as well over here. And if you leave him free, he can play it to him. But if the midfielder goes and presses him as well, now this guy is free over here. Edison has the passing range to find him directly.
And I think that's the key, right? You're playing off from the back. That Edison has that range. So you can press as much as you want, but he can play a crossfield. He can play a chip pass. I've seen him play a number of chip passes out to the flanks and up top as well. So I think that's the key, right? The fact that he's such a ball-playing goalkeeper.
Yep. And he's extreme, as you said, he's really good at it, and he can play a variety in short passes, long passes really accurately. So again, even in build-up, it all boils down to them City trying to isolate players, trying to find gaps in this manner, and then say, like, if he plays this pass, this guy has then got a huge space to run into, because this player has to cover for either both him and him. So if he gets drawn out here, he can pass it here, and so on and so forth. So, as I said, it's just a lot of a lot of decisions that the opposition need to make, and it's a trade-off that if I stop this from happening, if I stop
something else is going to happen.
So you need to. It's a case of working out what do you want. Do you want them to have the ball in this part of the pitch, or do you want them to have the ball in a different part of the pitch? What players get on the ball? So it's a dynamic sort of situation that teams.
And I'll add one more thing before we jump to the Klopp discussion. Right? I think it's also the quality of that team, right, or the quality of those individuals. Because you can see some teams. What you could do is you can say, listen, we'll give him space. He's a bigger danger for us. We'll close him out. We're willing to give him space. But with City, you can't do that because everyone is quality. You give anyone space, and they're going to kill you.
One of the biggest examples. Go on. Sorry, Al.
No, I say everyone has space. So basically, pace on the fullbacks are a prerequisite for City. It's like you need to have extensive amount of pace to actually be able to take on this kind of role. So that's why I see happening all the time. Yeah.
One of the biggest examples of what you said is United and Van Bissaka. I mean, opposition sort of teams have figured out that Wan Bissaka is not that great on the ball, so they leave him free.
You're willing to have him have the ball, yes.
Yeah, I don't care if Wan Bissaka's on the ball; he's not going to hurt us. But if Luke Shaw gets on the ball, if Maguire gets on the ball, Fernandes, Pogba, these guys get on the ball, then obviously they're going to hurt us. Wan Bissaka, it's fine, let him have the ball. So it's as you said, teams work that sort of thing out and try to base their strategy based on that. But with City, who are you okay having letting on the ball? So as you said, it's a case of top-notch quality across the board, and then add to that the strategy that they use.